Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? I hope everyone can hear me. All right, hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bullseye Admissions webinar on applying with the Common App portal. And to just orient everyone a little bit with the webinar timing and different chat tabs, I'll start off with a presentation to help you get familiar with the Common App, then answer your questions in a live Q&A. On the sidebar, you can download our slides in the Handouts tab, and you can start submitting questions in the Q&A tab. So to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Iris. I'm a Bullseye advisor, and I'm an incoming freshman at Stanford, and I plan on studying computer science and economics. I also applied to college twice, so the first time as a junior in high school and the second time as a senior in high school. And when I was junior, I wasn't very successful with college applications, but then I kind of changed my strategy a lot for senior year, and that helped me get into Stanford and a lot of other top schools. Also, Lily here is here for tech support, so feel free to DM her if you have any tech issues. So without further ado, we'll move into the presentation. All of you guys are probably here wondering why you should apply with the Common App. So the simple answer is that most schools don't have their own application these days, and so they require you to apply through a portal like the Common Application, the Coalition application, or say the UCs, they require you to apply through the UC applications. So the Common App is just the most popular portal for almost every single school out there, and it hosts the most number of colleges. So compared to Coalition, QuestBridge, and other applications, you'll probably have the most luck just using the Common App, and you just have to do it once, and you can apply to like 20 schools or however many schools you want to apply to. The Common Application is also most commonly known by counselors and teachers because it's kind of the most popular application out there. So they're going to be familiar with submitting recommendations through the platform, so you don't really have to worry about teaching them how to use the platform. The Common Application also opens on August 1st, so that's coming up pretty soon. So I would recommend all of you guys out there to just kind of go into the Common Application now. You can make an account and preview to see what it looks like and all the different tabs that there are. But don't fill things out until it opens, because everything that you do fill out right now will be refreshed and cleared on August 1st. Now, there are several different sections of the Common App, so I'll give an overview on this slide, and then we'll dive a little deeper throughout the presentation. So first, there's the profile, and then the family, and then education, testing, activities, writing, courses, and grades. And then the courses and grades, I find that most people don't actually fill out that tab. Only if you're applying to a very specific school that requires it, like USC, you don't have to fill that out. All right, so our first section that we're going to talk about is the profiles and family section. So this is probably the most straightforward tab of all of the Common App. So you just fill it out as if you're filling out your contact or personal information, whether it's like to the hospital or the bank. You just be very honest with it and just state some facts. You might need your parents to help you fill out some of the personal information, including their education background, current jobs, date of birth. But for the most part, you should be able to handle this part pretty well just with your parents or on your own. Now, the second section is education. So this part, it's more catered to your unique application. So there's a lot of like check boxes like, hey, have you attended another high school? And if you check yes, there's going to be another prompt that shows up, and it's going to be a required prompt that's going to be 250 word long, and you have to provide details about why you left each of the above secondary or high schools. So I find that some students kind of get stressed about this, but really with these types of straightforward questions, just be direct, be honest, and try to put everything in a positive light, but also don't like exaggerate or just kind of state it factually. And then there's also a future plan section. So this is a great way for you to show interest in a specific field. So say you want to be a doctor now, this is a place that you can kind of put that there. But you're also not bound to this career path. So remember, this is a place for you to show interest, not to tie yourself to any one career path. So what I recommend to my students here at Bullseye is that you try to pick something that is related to your application theme or narrative, because remember, the application reader is going to be reading everything from your profile section to your education section to your essays. And the education section can almost tie in with your essays in the sense that, you say that you're interested in becoming a doctor, and then you write essays regarding medicine, and that kind of ties your application together in this cohesive narrative, and that makes you more memorable as an applicant. In the education section, you can also list your awards and honors. Now, this is really deceptive because I think a lot of students think awards and honors should be in the activities section, which we'll get to, but it's actually hidden in the education section, which is really weird. But you don't have to list everything that is related to education. So if you have a music award, you can still list it here. And I recommend that you order it from the most impressive to the least impressive, and from the most recent to the least recent. So for example, you can start with your 12th grade international honors and then move down to your 9th grade local honors. You also want to lead with impact and competitiveness in the formatting. So you only get 150 characters to put down in every honor. So something that will lead with impact is something like global teen leader, parentheses, selected out of 800 applicants. So that gives the admissions officer a little bit of context about what the award actually is if they've never heard of it before. And it also helps them see that, you won this thing that was pretty competitive. Now, moving on to the testing section, again, you want to be honest about listing all of your test sittings. And if a college super scores, they will super score on their end of the system, not the common application. So even if you're applying to schools that do super score, you still have to list all of your test sittings in the common application. And then on their end, they will only see your highest scores from your highest sittings. All right, so now we're going to do a little bit of a poll. So the question for this one is, are you planning to use the Common App for your college applications? 0% not using the Common App. Not surprised for a Common App webinar. Awesome. So you guys should be able to see what everybody said for the poll. Looks like a lot of you guys are going to be using the Common application in addition to some other polls. All right, moving on to the activities section. So this is something that a lot of students I find stress over because you're kind of fitting your entire 4 years of extracurriculars into 250 characters, and you only get to list 10 activities. So first off, don't feel obligated to fill up all 10 spots. A lot of successful applicants to top schools only use like 5 to 8 spots because at the end of the day, it's going to be the depth of your activities that matter more than the breadth of your activities. So quality over quantity. And now with the 250 character word limit, you want to be as powerful and punchy as possible. So really lead with quantities. So like, for example, if you impacted this many number of people, state that. And lead with these qualifications as well, so any accomplishments that you achieved. So here I just have an example for somebody who is doing flute. So if you say that your activity was playing the flute, this could be an example of what you put down. So again, leading with awards and something like 2x, that's like a quantity. So just really exemplifies all of your accomplishments in 250 characters. Again, similar to the honors section, you want to order your activities from the most impressive or important to you to the least impressive or important to you. So many applicants will have an application theme or a spike, and you kind of want to lead with that and maybe even categorize everything that goes into your spike in the first couple of activities. That way, admissions officer can kind of read for this theme when they're reading through the list, right? So when they see 1, 2, 3, wow, it's all related to computer science, they might be like, oh, this is somebody who's interested in computer science. So always lead with the things that are most unique to you and that you have high achievements in. There's also a section in the activities that asks for your time commitment. So that's going to be your hours per week and week per year. So don't stress about this part, just calculate your best estimate for the time commitment, but also keep in mind, like, don't overguess and don't underguess too much, just give it your best guesstimate. And then also use powerful punchlines in the description. We went through this a little bit, but use numbers, name drop awards, do not use full sentences, and use abbreviations whenever possible. So we kind of went through an example of how to format your activities, but if you guys have any more questions about that, feel free to leave it in the Q&A and we can get to it in the second half of this presentation. So this is what the activity tab looks like. You can see how you have an activity type. So things are like other club or activity. There's something like volunteering, some other things like just different things you can choose from. To be honest, I don't think the activity type matters that much. Just choose something that is most relevant. And then you have a certain a little tab here for putting your description and organization name if possible. So in this case, the applicant just said founder and executive director of See the Voices, which is the organization. And then here you have the 150 character limit where you can put your description of the activity. And I recommend all students to work on this in a Google Doc or something outside of the Common Application and then pasting that into the Common Application later. And then the participation grade levels and time of participation, I think that's pretty straightforward. But if you have questions, just put them in the Q&A. All right, and now moving on to the writing section. So for the Common Application specifically, in the general Common App, there's just one prompt, which is your personal essay. This is also probably known to a lot of people as the Common Application essay. So it's 650 words long, or that's the character limit, so you can go below that, but you can't go over. So this essay is going to be sent to all colleges that you apply to, so every single college you put into your Common Application college list. You can choose out of 7 prompts, including the last prompt, which is right on the topic of your choice. So essentially, this means that this essay can be on whatever you want it to be on, which means that a good recommendation for students is that you should just write the essay first and then pick the prompt later, because the prompt is not going to be limiting as to the scope of what your essay is going to be about. So here are the 2020 to 2021 Common App essay prompts. You can just kind of take a quick look if you haven't already to see if any of them are particularly appealing. So usually what happens is that if you find that one of if your essay doesn't fit into the first 6 prompts, so here's the 4th one and the 5th one, then you can choose the last prompt, which is on a topic of your choice. But usually if you find that it does fit into a prompt, then put it there so that it kind of better gears the admissions officer to read something that is going to be relevant to the prompt. It's almost like a foreshadowing. All right, so in the writing section, there's also an optional additional information section. You can use it if you have accomplishments or extenuating circumstances that you want to highlight, but definitely do not abuse the section. So what I mean by that is sometimes students will just write irrelevant things that's not going to really add to their application, or just kind of deters from their entire application theme in general. And that just puts extra work on an admissions officer who is reading so many essays day in and day out. And if you just put something that's not really relevant, they might honestly just get annoyed. So don't abuse the section, but do use it strategically. So again, you have 650 words, and I recommend that you bullet point all of these to make it really skimmable. So first, you can explain extenuating circumstances if any of those affected your high school career. So don't make it sound whiny, but focus on the positives. So how did you grow from your experiences? If an internship got canceled, how did you use that extra time to pursue another opportunity? If your grades fell because of family instability or other responsibilities, how did you contribute to your family or your community, and what did you learn from these responsibilities? You can also list extra awards or activities that did not fit into the activities list here, but again, don't abuse the section. Don't just put like 30 other activities here. They probably aren't going to be relevant to your application, so just list the strong awards that you wish you had put earlier, but you just didn't have room for. But don't just like add on things for the sake of adding things on. Again, use lists and make it skimmable. All right, and now we're going to talk a little bit about actually navigating on the Common Application. So you can add schools through the portal, and what you do is you go to the College Search tab, you can enter a school's name, and then you can add the school. You can also remove a school at any time. So feel free to just add the schools to kind of look at their prompts, because the supplemental essay prompts will be shown in the school's specific tab after you add the school. So you can add the school to look at their prompts, and then if you feel like, oh, I'm not actually going to apply, then you can remove the school. Alternatively, you can also just go on the school's website to check out their supplemental essay prompts. Most schools should have those listed. So as you can see here, this is the college search bar right here. And then when you have a specific school, you can see the writing supplement, and then it'll be listed under questions, and then you'll be able to see all the questions. All right, now we're going to do another quick poll. So how many of you guys how many schools are y'all planning to apply to? We got one response for 12 to 14 schools. Very interesting. Looks like many people are applying to 8 to 11 schools. And also, if you're not sure yet, that's totally okay. And just as a heads up, at Bullseye, we recommend applying to between 8 to 14 schools, made up of 2 to 4 safety schools, 3 to 5 match schools, and 3 to 5 reach schools. This is to balance out the quality of your essays with your workload. And the maximum number of schools you can apply to with the Comment app is 20. Awesome. So looks like everybody got a chance to do the poll, and you guys can see what everybody else is planning to do. Awesome. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about requesting recommendations through the Common application. So oddly enough, for whatever reason, you can only access the request recommendations from a specific college. So you have to go to My Colleges and then click on any specific college. So for example, I just put Stanford here, and then you have to click on Recommendations in FERPA. So it's recommended that you waive your FERPA rights, and what FERPA rights are is basically saying whether or not you can see the recommendation before it's submitted. So if you waive your FERPA rights, that means you cannot see the recommendation. And this is recommended because usually how colleges view it is that if you're able to see the recommendation, then that probably means the recommender was pressured to write something good about you. So if you waive your FERPA rights and you're not able to see it, so you have no idea what your recommender is going to say, and then your recommender gives you a positive recommendation, then we know that that is an impartial and relatively unbiased version of what they have to say about you. So it's kind of their true thoughts in a sense. And then once you invite recommenders for one school, you can select them for all of your other schools. So say you invited them under Stanford, you can just add on the recommendation to all of your other schools in the college tab, in the My Colleges tab. And then most schools also recommend using one STEM and one humanities recommendation, and they require a counselor or principal recommendation. So these can vary school to school. This is just kind of a general, like most schools recommend this. So I would actually go in the schools tab and see how many they actually recommend. Also, there's an option of submitting optional recommendations that you can definitely consider. It's an option, but in no means necessary. And also to keep in mind is that you don't have to submit every recommendation you receive. So what I mean by this is that you can request recommendations from, say, 5 different teachers, and 5 different teachers will submit your recommendations to your Common App portal. However, it's ultimately you at the end of the day who submits the recommendation to the colleges. So say for Stanford, you'll pick teacher A and B for those 2 rec letters. And then for, let's say, Vanderbilt, you pick teacher B and C. So you ultimately get to choose which recommendations you send for which school. All right, so here is just a general overview of what the recommendation tab looks like. Again, you click on the specific school, and then you can click on recommenders in FERPA, and then you can invite recommenders. And then usually it'll kind of like give you a little update on like recommendation request sent, and then like recommendation submitted. So you'll actually be able to see when exactly your teacher submits your recommendation. All right, and now we're just gonna close with a little bit of a pro tips and tricks section. So a general tip is to create a new email to associate with your Common App account. And this is recommended because all of your colleges will be communicating with you via your account's email. So I find it just nice to have all my college emails coming to one account instead of like my personal email, just so that I don't miss anything, and also that just so that it's more organized in a sense. And then also make sure that your email is going to be professional or even related to one of your interests or activities. So for example, a friend of mine applied with mathphysics24@gmail.com, and he was applying for the physics major, and he was accepted to Princeton as a physics major. So that's just kind of like one little tip for boosting your application theme or site that you're trying to portray. You can even do it through the email that you register with, that you associate with your account. Another thing you can do is to use the preview function before submitting, and I think 100% you should definitely do this, because I know some of my friends, they had trouble like with the, what are they called? I think they're called like M dashes. Like you put them in as M dashes when you copy and paste, say from Google Doc, but then when you preview, it actually becomes like a hyphen. So it's like super short, and then it just makes it really difficult to read. So definitely take the time to preview your essays and everything you put in there on the PDF format, because that's what the admissions officer is ultimately going to see. So just make sure that the formatting looks good. If there's extra spaces or anything, get rid of them. So definitely take the time to do that. And also, just a heads up, like adjusting the formatting can honestly take like an hour or maybe even longer. So if any of you guys are like procrastinators who are going to submit at like 11:59, definitely plan to have everything ready and good to go, but like definitely a few hours before so you can check the formatting. Now we're going to move on to the questions and answers. So that is the end of the presentation part of the webinar. I hope you found these opportunities. Oh, wait. Yes. Okay. Sorry, guys. I hope you found these slides helpful, and remember that you can download the slides in the handouts tab. And now we'll be moving on to the live Q&A, where I'll read through the questions that you submitted in the Q&A tab, and then I'll paste them into the public chat so you guys can see it, and then I'll read them out loud before I answer. Also, as a heads up, if your Q&A tab isn't letting you submit questions, just double check that you joined the webinar through the custom link in your email, not from the webinar landing page. So our first question is going to be, when is the Common App due? So this is very college dependent. So there is no one deadline for the Common Application, but each school has their own deadlines for when you have to submit the Common Application. So for most early action or early decision schools, it's going to be due on November 1st. And also, just kind of to give you guys a sense of what's going to happen, is you will probably submit the Common Application first, which is one button. You click submit, and then there's like confetti that comes up. It's like congrats. And then it tells you that you also have to submit the school's supplement. So that's like like an extra application that you submit through the Common App portal. So it'll like instruct you in the Common App, thank you for submitting the Common Application to, let's say, Stanford University. Please make sure that you also submit the Stanford University supplement before your school's deadline. So let's say Stanford has their early action deadline November 1st. You submit the Common App first, but then you also have to submit the supplemental, which is also it's just in the Common App portal, but it's just one extra button you have to click. So make sure you do that as well. And then it'll give you confetti again once you submit that. Okay, let's see. Does QuestBridge use the Common App or the Coalition app? So actually, QuestBridge is going to be its own application. So it's a completely different portal. I think they even use some different essays and word limits. So it's just completely different. It's a program, and they also have their own portal. Should we try to apply to schools once the Common App opens in August? Is earlier the better? So the school deadline, I think the earliest deadlines will be in like October-ish. And if you submit an application before, like let's say the deadline, I'm pretty sure the admissions officers just won't really, I don't know. Like, I guess the answer to this is we're not really sure. We don't really know what goes on in the admissions office. But just from what I've read online, it seems like, at least for regular decision, because they're so crammed reading early like application things like November, and December, like when you submit it, say like December 1st for a regular deadline, that's actually January 1st, they're not really going to get to it until definitely mid to late December, and maybe start reading it in January. Also, usually before fall starts, admissions officers are on kind of this recruiting trips, so to speak. So they're not actually reading applications all year round. So during off season, they'll go around the country. I'm not sure if that's happening right now, but usually they'll go around the country to like speak to your schools and kind of get students interested in applying. Someone asked, what school do you go to? I'm just going to quickly say Stanford. And then let's see. I'm an international student. What if my current school doesn't know about the common application? How can I ask for their recommendation? So it's totally okay if your school doesn't know about the common application. All you have to do is ask your teacher for a recommendation and say that you're going to send them a request through the common application and tell them to look out for an email from the common application. And I think it should be pretty straightforward. They can just access the portal from their email and be able to submit it through the portal. Let's see. What changes did you make to, oh, sorry, let's, okay, someone asked, what changes did you make to your initial application when you applied as a senior? So this is not completely relevant to the common application Q&A. So I'll just like really quickly say it, but I think I just really focused on building an application spike or a theme. When should we try to finish our personal essay? Before school starts? Yeah, that is a huge recommendation by a lot of people I've met who've had success applying to colleges. And I think it's because senior year is pretty heavy academically. And if you're going to be applying to over 10 schools, that's a lot of work for you. So just to kind of balance that workload, it's better to start early in the summer and try to finish all your applications before school starts so that you're less stressed out when school actually starts. Let's see. Should I send my Common App letter rec request to my teachers now, even if I'm not 100% sure I'm gonna send a recommendation? So yes, I would recommend that you do request their recommendation, even if you're not sure, because just the fact that you actually get to choose which recommendation you send at the end of the day really gives you that opportunity to just get more recommendations that you actually send out, so that if you're uncertain now, you can have that time to be indecisive and then choose later when you're actually about to submit your application. That's something that I definitely did. So for example, when I didn't actually know what my application theme would be, I like requested recommendations from teachers who I thought could kind of say good things about me. But then when I actually drilled in more on what I thought my theme would be, I basically used the recommendations that I knew would support my theme. So even though the other letters were probably still good and positive, I really wanted to emphasize that theme. So I just chose the letters that did that. All right. Does using one spare email rather than the primary one in Common App affect us in any way? I'm not sure what you mean by spare email, but I don't think that the email address that you use will affect you in any way, so per se. Like, I think they're just, so on your application, they're going to see your email address, so they'll be able to read it. So if it's something like really childish or something, they're probably going to assume that you're not very mature. So just definitely make one that's professional. How do you know which recommendation letter to send out if you couldn't read it? So what happened was I would give my recommenders a quote unquote cheat sheet for what they can write. So it was kind of like an outline of the highlights that I wanted them to portray in their letter. And I knew that they were probably going to follow the outline because that's less work for them if they just write it from an outline. So I kind of had a pretty general sense of what they were writing about. And I would actually give them like specific stories or moments that they could write about to like support points. So yeah, it was literally like an essay outline, I guess, and they were the person writing the essay and submitting it. All right. Should I tell my teachers that are writing my letter of recommendation my application theme? So yes, I think you should. So it's always helpful to give your teacher more information than less, just so that they have a clear picture of who you are as an applicant. And I think it definitely serves you well to tell them what your theme is and explicitly ask them to support that theme so that it will show through the recommendation letter and help the admissions officer understand you better as an applicant. Should the Common App essay be reserved for showing personality through specific situations, or would talking about larger events in life, for example, moving or weight loss and lessons learned, also be good? So just general essay advice, I would say that you always want to go from specific story to larger revelations. So don't be very, very specific and just talk about the lessons you learned in life without supporting it with any examples. So a common thing to say is show, not tell. But showing just means painting it with examples and stories. That's showing what you learned. And then you can spend, like, say, 10% of your essay actually telling what you learned if you'd like. But really, you should be focusing on like specific stories and moments, because those are what's supporting the larger point of your essay. And it also helps you connect better with the admissions officer, because I think just as human beings, we're more likely to connect with stories than we are to connect with like a piece of dry academic writing or just explainers. I'd say, like, if you just say, I am happy today, like, nobody is gonna really understand that. So the more specific you are, the better you're gonna be understood. Is it okay to copy supplemental essays if they're for different schools? Well, the schools know I've used the same general supplemental essay for multiple colleges. So you can completely copy your supplemental essays for different schools, but the downside to that might be that your supplemental essay won't be that school specific. So a way that a school can tell that you're submitting the same essay to multiple schools is that you're just very, very generalized. Say with the Y school essay, like you just say something super duper generalized and then you can send it to like all of your schools, but then the schools that receive it is not going to feel like they're actually appreciated because it's so generalized, and then they don't actually know that it's like individualized for them. It's almost like a marketing email, right? Like a lot of the times we'll just see this general piece of text and we're like, oh, that doesn't really apply to me, or it's too general. But then say your best friend writes a letter to you and refers to the specific moments that you guys had together, that if anybody else read it, they would know that it's not meant for them. So almost do that with your supplemental essays to specific schools. Make it really, really catered to one school so that when they actually read it, they're like, okay, this person wrote it for us and not for another school. Therefore, they really value our school and will consider them more highly as well. All right. Will I be affected if I do not fill out the additional information section? So no, you should not be affected. The additional information section is completely optional, and it's not recommended. It's optional. Like sometimes schools will be like, oh, taking 3 SAT subject tests is optional, but like it's still like strongly recommended. But for the additional information section, it's actually optional. Don't feel pressured to fill it out at all. Do you feel that college acceptance process is based on luck at times? Yes, 100%. There is so much luck that goes into the process. You know, at the end of the day, the schools are making decisions for who they think would fill their institutional needs the most. And sometimes you don't actually know what those institutional needs are. So all you can really do is just present your best self, and then they can pick and choose. In a Y school essay, what are some things you should mention to be specific about a certain school? Great question. So you can definitely reference specific programs that the school offers that's interesting to you. So anytime that you're using pronouns, so like nouns with capitalization, like that's when you know that you're being specific enough, because it's probably very specific to the school. Other things that are specific would be like buildings or specific professors, the city. Just think about things that are unique to the school, and don't just name drop the specific stuff. Also kind of support why that program or professor or the city relates to your interests in any way. Maybe tie it together with your experiences. So like a formula that I kind of used in my supplemental essays was that I would first refer to a personal experience I had and like an involvement I had in some way. And then I would say, oh, and now I want to do that at Cornell through this program. And this program would enable me to do the same or carry that initiative one step further. So I directly tied my personal experiences with what the school offered and made that connection. All right. Would you mind sharing your experience with College App? Uh, hmm, oh, I think this question is it's a good question, but maybe it would be better for a one-on-one advisor call. We have like a web of amazing advisors, but I think we all have different experiences with the college application process. We probably all applied to different numbers of colleges. So personally, I applied to 20. It's on the upper limit. And then with the personal essay, I personally started about June, I would say. And then I, and then I like worked it until basically every single one of my deadlines. So my first was November 1st. But then even between November 1st and then my second deadline, which was December 1st, I still like edited the essay. So I think with essays, it's really like art where there's really no finish line. You can just keep editing. So that's why it's almost like an endless process. But I think just know that like once you reach to like 90% of like what you're satisfied with, it's probably not gonna make or break your application at all. Like adding that extra comma or not adding the comma is probably not gonna matter at the end of the day. Okay, so for the Y School essay, should we focus on one main topic, for example, business programs, or many, for example, art group, sports culture, econ classes, etc.? So I think it really depends on the prompt's length. So for something like a 250-word supplemental essay, you probably don't have enough room to focus on 3 different topics. But if it's like 650 words, which I know Cornell's supplemental essay is 650 words, then maybe for every paragraph, you can focus on one specific offering that the school has. But yeah, so I would say this is really prompt dependent, but the general rule of thumb would be to dig deeper rather than spread yourself too thin. So even with a 650 word essay, when you feel like you can actually just focus on business programs that the school offers for an entire 650 words, then by all means do that. If you can support that with like specific examples and just really go on about it. But just, I think it's always better to just dig deeper at one topic than it is to have 5 topics out there and not really dig deep into why you're interested in any of them. All right. Do you write paragraphs in the supplemental essays? So again, this kind of depends on the length of the prompt. But in general, I would say do break it in paragraphs because it's just easier on the eyes if you kind of see when is the beginning of the paragraph, when's the topic sentence. Like it's just easier for you to skim rather than one large block of text. So for the 250 words, which are pretty common, I think I would have about 2 paragraphs, maybe, sometimes 3. And sometimes the paragraphs would be really short, like 1 sentence. And I think just having those breaks in between, it just helps it feel nicer to read. So I would recommend having paragraphs. Okay, so a lot of questions are about building, a lot of the questions are about building the application theme. And since this webinar isn't that related, I would say to check out the advisors that we have. And I'm actually going to send an offer right now. You guys can check it out. We have a lot of advisors that you guys can work with. And I think building your theme is going to be a very personalized process. So yeah. All right.
Iris, do you want to describe some of the advising packages that we have, and I can flip to the next slide?
Yeah, did I just send an offer? I think I did.
Yeah, I saw it on my screen.
Okay, awesome. Oh, yeah. All right. Okay, so we're partway through the Q&A, and as a quick break, I want to let you guys know about Bullseye a little bit. So Bullseye has 2 advising plans, the starter plan and the scholar plan. They're both monthly subscriptions where you get matched with an advisor of your choice, and you get 1 or 2 hours of one-on-one advising each month. As advisors, I help with college apps, scholarship apps, writing about your extracurriculars, pretty much anything that you need help with, no matter where you are in the college process. If you want to work with me or another advisor on starting up your Common App, I'm sending everyone, which I think I already sent, I sent everyone at this panel an offer where you'll be able to work with me or another Bullseye advisor in a 15 minutes free trial. So that's pretty awesome. And then the offer links to a page where you can schedule a call with Brian Mitchell, who is in charge of Bullseye, and he'll get you set up to choose an advisor and get started. So our students at Bullseye have had a ton of success working with an advisor. Just this past admission season alone, we had Bullseye clients get into every single Ivy League and top 25 countries in the schools in the country. Our clients rate us 9.8 out of 10, and that's because as advisors, we put a ton of care into working with you one-on-one through every step of your application process. And just a personal plug here, I really enjoy working with my students. I think it's one of the more fulfilling jobs that I do, and I think it's just amazing to interact with you guys, not just over a webinar, but just like face-to-face over video calls, and really see you guys progress through the months and as you go through the college application process, which I know is pretty stressful, but I think having someone there for you is really quite a relief. All right. All right, so now I'm going to continue with the Q&A. All right, so lots of questions coming in. Oh, someone said they didn't get the offer, so I'll send it again really fast. I think it should pop up on your screen. And if you click the link, that's where you'll be able to go schedule the free 15-minute trial. All right, Sophia, sorry, I've worked with this student before, so this is awesome. But she asked, what section did you put down on for your passion project? So I guess I have a college admissions YouTube channel, and there I've talked about passion projects quite a bit. So passion projects are essentially extracurricular activities. So I would put them in the activities section. So passion projects are just, I think, a self-started extracurricular, so you're not joining anything, but it's still an activity that you do outside of school. So I would list it under the 10 activities that you have space for. All right, can you add additional recommendations from mentors outside of your school? So the answer to this question is that it depends on the school. So for schools like Stanford, I know there's definitely an option for you to submit extra optional recommendations, and I think the limit for Stanford is 1. The limit for every school really depends. I've seen like 3, so you can have 5 letters total with 3 optionals. And some schools just don't let you submit any optional letters. For the UCs, they don't let you submit any letters at all. So it's very, very school dependent. And I think also some schools are very specific with their optional letter of recommendation. So for example, for Dartmouth, they have a strongly recommended optional letter from a peer. So it's called a peer recommendation. So with that, it's like they recommend you to have a peer recommendation, not necessarily like a mentor from outside of your school. With some schools, they're more open about the optional. It can come from anyone. For some schools, it might be like limited to another teacher. So really, really school dependent. I would kind of add the school to your Common App portal, and then you can kind of see how many recommendations you're allowed to add in that school specific tab. All right, is it looked down upon to link your website on the additional info section? So definitely not. I believe admissions officers don't click on any of the links. I had a friend who tracked all the IP addresses of a website that he linked in his application, and none of them came from any colleges. So it also makes sense because admissions officers, they just don't have the time. And I think there's also a security concern with like clicking links. So yeah, so admissions officers will probably not click on the link, but if you do have the link there, it's almost like proof that you did do something and that it exists. So say you say like the press did an article on me, and then you put a link there. I think the link is just kind of like extra proof that like, yes, the article exists. Or if you say you made a website, you can put the link, but it's definitely not looked down upon. All right. What if I don't have any national awards? Should I be worried? I don't think you should be worried that you don't have any national awards. At the end of the day, I think just like do your best on everything. Obviously, try to go to competitions or get awards. But if you don't have any, all the parts of the application, they're all like one part of the big picture. So say you don't have any national awards, you can still have a really strong application through your essays or your activities section or your teacher recommendations. So don't get too stressed out about just one particular section of the application. All right. Do you submit your personal essay to each school, or when submitting it once, it will go to all the schools you are applying for? Oh, that's a really great question. So logistic-wise, when you submit an application for each school, so we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, there's a common application submission, and then there's a supplemental school submission. So there's two parts when you actually submit an application for one school. And so usually the common application just copies over your essay to the school and then you submit it. But also between schools, you can change your common application. So we kind of went over in the slides how there's that box that you can put in the writing section for the essay. So say, for example, you want to submit different common applications to Stanford and USC. So right before you submit Stanford, you can have the 650-word essay A, let's call it essay A, in the Common App tab. And then you can submit the Common App portion of the Stanford application, and that will go to Stanford. And now let's say you're about to submit your USC application and you want to use a different essay, let's call it essay B. Then you can go ahead and copy essay B into the Common App tab for writing, and then get rid of essay A, put in essay B, and then submit your USC Common Application. I hope that made sense, but basically you can still change your Common Application essay between submissions so that in the end you can technically have different personal essays sent to each school. But if you don't want that, you can just have the same essay sent to every school. All right. Can you go back to edit your Common Application once you submit it? So essentially what the Common Application does is that it generates everything you input into the boxes into a PDF, and then it sends the PDF to the college. And once it's sent, you can't edit that sent PDF anymore. However, you can still edit the Common Application so that when you send it to the next school, it'll be different. But just remember that after you submit it to one school, you really can't change anything that one school sees. But you can change things so that the next school will see something different. How should you report bad AP scores on the Common App? What if your school reports all the AP scores on your transcript? That's a really great question as well. So I believe if your school reports all your AP scores on your transcript, then the college is going to be able to see that because it's on your transcript. However, if they don't, then you really have the choice to report whichever AP scores you want to. Reporting all of your AP scores, I believe, is not necessary. I think it's all optional. So yeah, with the SAT subject tests and AP tests, reporting the scores are completely optional. All right, so someone asked, is published research an honor or award? So this can go, okay, so I think what you're trying to say is it an honors or award, or is it an extracurricular activity? And I would say it can go both ways. You can say, so you can put science research as an activity, and then you can put where your research was published in the 250 character description. However, I recommend to students that say they have too many awards under science research, then they can kind of push one of their awards to the awards and honors section. So it's really pretty free flowing. You can really do whatever is best that works for your application. If you get rejected early action, should you change your Common App essay or do something differently on your application? Ooh, so this is really a college strategy question, I guess. And I would say getting rejected early action from, say, a very, very selective school is by no means a sign that your application is going to be bad for other schools as well. So just for me, like I got rejected from a lot of other top schools, but I did get into Stanford, and I think my personal essay was the same for all of the schools. So just because you get rejected from one school doesn't mean you're going to get rejected from other schools, especially if that one school is really selective. So I would say don't change your essay if you're happy with it. If you think it really represents who you are, then keep it the way it is. But if you feel like, oh, I don't actually feel that secure or confident about this piece of writing because it doesn't actually portray me that well, then do spend the time between early action results and regular decision to maybe polish your essay or write on something else. All right, are there awards you can still receive the summer before senior year? Yeah, so I bet there are lots of awards out there that you can apply to or just even receive. Like, remember the awards and honor section is more like honors. So almost like anything can be an honor. So say you met a really famous person, that is honorable and that could be counted as an honor. So anything that happens before senior year or even during senior year, you can put on your application. Okay. Let's do a few more questions. Okay, so if you get rejected early action or decision, are you able to reapply for the same school regular decision? So the answer to this question is going to be no. You can only apply to one school during one cycle of the admissions process. So if you get rejected early, you can't apply again regular, at least in the same year. So you could say in the following application season, you can apply again to the same school. All right, someone else asked, is being in National Honor Society an award or an extracurricular? So I've seen this go both ways. I've seen students who can't really describe what they do in National Honor Society. They just put that in the awards section because remember the awards character limit is even less than the activities character limit. So if you do decide to put it in the activities section, then you should be able to really strengthen what you did in that activity with the 250 characters. So maybe if you even received awards under National Honor Society, then you can put that into 250 characters. But if you just feel like you don't have that much to say at all about National Honor Society, then just put it in as an award. All right. Okay. If you submit, oh, this is a really good question. If you receive any honor or award after you submit your application, is there a way to add it onto your application? So the answer is going to be yes and no. So you can't change your application after you submit it, remember? However, you can follow up with the school by emailing their admissions office and updating them on your application. So you can essentially update them with an email. And most likely what will happen is that email will be attached to your application, kind of like a separate piece of the application almost. So you can do that. And I think like some admissions offices do encourage you to do it because I've gotten emails from admissions offices that's like, oh, especially for deferred students, like if you're deferred and you feel like you have any additional accomplishments you want to let us know about, feel free to email us. And some schools even have an update form in their portal. So after you submit your application, you'll get a portal from that specific school. And that's where you will log in to check your application status. But even within that portal, you can see the status of your application, whether or not it's been submitted, whether your test scores have been received. And then there's also probably going to be an area for you to submit updates. All right. If you are deferred to the regular pool, will colleges still look at the same application or will a new one be sent? So the same application will be looked at. So essentially what deferred is that they'll kind of reconsider your application again once they have the context of the entire pool of applicants. So you don't get to submit a new application. you just get to submit the application once, and then it'll just be looked at once again. Are we able to preview the PDF generated by Common App before submitting? Yes, you are. So there's a preview function. You can click that button, and then it generates a PDF on your computer. You can even download it if you want to save it for future reference, but I highly recommend that you look at that PDF and make sure that you're happy with the formatting before submitting it to the school. Do colleges see your second semester senior grades? Great question. So they won't at first, at least not until after a second semester senior grade or second semester ends. However, if you're accepted to a school and you commit to the school, you're required to send your second semester senior grades to the school. So say you start flunking or something, they have full power to, I guess, rescind you. So still keep up your grades second semester. What is the resume? How is it sent in? So not all schools have a section for the resume. The most basic formatting is just the activities section. That's kind of like your resume, and that's formatted completely within the Common Application. So there are some schools like Vanderbilt, I remember, which allowed you to submit an additional resume in addition to the 10 activities that you list. However, that's completely optional, and I haven't experienced any schools that required you to actually upload your resume. So you really don't really need a resume. I think it's like I didn't send in a resume to any of my schools. I don't think it's really necessary because the 10 activities cover it. All right. How does the Common App work if you're applying to an honors program at an institution or a specific program? This is a really good question. So most likely what will happen is that in the Common Application, in the school-specific questions, it'll ask, are you applying to this program? And if you click yes, most likely a bunch of new prompts will be generated in your portal, and you'll be able to submit your answers to those essay prompts or submit specific answers related to that program. Are colleges able to see the other colleges that you're applying to? So no, they will not be able to see that. Do you have any tips for balancing workload to meet admission deadlines and stay organized? So I really highly recommend using a spreadsheet or something like OneNote, where it's essentially a spreadsheet where you can like organize your school list, every deadline, all the prompts that you need to answer, their different requirements, including the tests that you have to send. So remember, some schools require that you send in an official test scores while others don't. So for those schools that require an official test score, you actually have to go to College Board or ACT and request that a test, that a report gets sent to that school. And there's also a deadline affiliated with that. So make sure you just have all the required components information put into that spreadsheet, and then you can check things off as you go. Does the Common App let you apply to a specific college at the university? So yes, it will. So the Common App is just a portal, and usually the school will have school-specific questions. So say you're applying to Cornell, and then you're applying to the Hotel School of Management. Then when you, I believe in the Cornell tab, it will have questions that's like, what school are you applying to? And then you'll be able to select it. And then after you select it, it'll have that school-specific prompt that shows up. All right, so let's see. Oops. All right, so, okay. All right, guys, so thank you all for tuning in. That is the end of the panel. I had a really great time showing you how to navigate the Common App and answering your questions. If you want to discuss one-on-one about your college application, I'm going to resend the offer link to you where you can talk to me or another advisor for 15 minutes. And this is a free 15-minute trial. Awesome. I hope this webinar was helpful to you and that you feel more prepared for the application process. If I didn't get to your question, I'll also send out a feedback form later this evening where you can add additional questions. So our next webinar will be in 2 days on Thursdays. It will be another small group, members only workshop on how to research colleges from home during COVID-19. And if you're not a Bullseye member, our next webinar after that will be in 4 days on Saturday. This one will be focused on how to craft a Common App essay and how to approach the new optional COVID-19 supplement prompt. This webinar is open to the public and will be led by Lauren, our head of advising at Bullseye. Lauren has experience working in admissions and as a college counselor. When you leave the webinar, your page will redirect you to the registration portal for this session. Again, thank you guys so much for coming out to tonight's panel. I hope you all stay safe and have a great summer.